Today on the Intimacy Inquiry, I'm speaking with the most wonderful Jessi Magick, a somatic guide, ritualist, and embodiment facilitator whose work weaves together neuroscience, somatic psychology, and the sacred. Living between Connecticut and Costa Rica, Jessi honours the rhythms of nature as an animist and practicing witch, weaving magic into everything she creates. Her mission to school while lessons is a sanctuary for rewilding the body. What a fabulous phrase. Rewilding the body and awakening feminine power through sensual embodiment, ritual, and trauma-informed presence. Jessi offers courses and gatherings blending neuroscience, somatics, witchcraft, and sensual empowerment, while a retreat company, Hedonism Travel, hosts transformative experiences worldwide. With a background in yoga, tantra, polyvagal theory, and therapeutic movement, Jessi helps others reconnect with their body's intelligence and reclaim the wisdom of their inner wildness. Her work invites us to descend into truth, to hold paradox, and to reimagine intimacy as a portal to liberation and healing. Wow, there's a lot there.
Yes, it is. I love hearing
I feel that you've lived 5 lifetimes to cover all those things. But I love how everything connects together. And at the end of I'll put in the show notes links to your website and stuff. It's a fabulous website. It offers a lot of information, insight for free. It offers lots of experiences you can try. It offers some amazing opportunities to go to Panama, to Costa Rica, to UK. There's a huge amount of things coming up. So, but I have to ask you first of all, what were you like during your formative years when you were sort of early teenager, late teens? Did you always feel on this path, or did you something you came to later in life? What was your upbringing like, do you think?
This is such an interesting question because I feel like, especially as a small child, I just had this conversation with one of my therapists as well, that I always felt out of place in my family of origin. My family of origin, both of my parents are martial artists. They're black belts. So I grew up in a dojo with a very intense, lots of athletes all around me. And I was always like, I want to paint pictures and sing songs and be friends and not punch people. Like I just had such a different orientation to the world. And I always felt very out of place as a result of that. So I have come to the conclusion that I started putting on extra, almost protective weight at a really young age for that reason, because I was just not sure how to navigate a world that didn't seem equipped for my sensitivity and my relationship to things. And I felt like I felt so deeply, and I didn't see modeled anywhere around me how to navigate that. Like I just didn't know how to feel as deeply as I did. So it was a bit turbulent through my teenage years and into in high school, just trying to figure out, how do I be this person that feels this much, and seeing the world the way that it is, and feeling like we were missing really important pieces of the puzzle as a society. So I was pretty young when I first came to like my first experience with energy work. I was 18, and I was fascinated by the concept that a person could be not touching me and I could be having this experience. And it just kicked the door open to a world that helped me make sense out of everything that I had been sensing, everything I had been feeling, and helped me to orient differently and move differently, even if it was incredibly against the grain. So I think that was a big piece of the puzzle for me, was finding that I wasn't wrong for the things I was feeling. It was the world that wasn't speaking to the true experience of being human. So I figured that out early enough on to say, no, I don't subscribe to to this disconnected, aggressive way of navigating my life. That would be.
And it's this is a big question, I guess. So then, how did you get from understanding that things could be different to recognizing where your space was, to deciding this wasn't only going to be somebody you were, but something you are and something that you do? How did it become your life as opposed to part of your life, if that makes sense?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I had great teachers. I've had so many. I went looking for, I think in the beginning, especially when we realize there's a whole world inside of a world, we go looking to understand. I think there's a big piece in all of us that wants to understand. And I've had some wonderful teachers along the way that were living and embodying and holding such a presence that allowed me to gain context. And it helped me to having these experiences with them. I was like, could I be a part of this conversation? Could I utilize all of these kind of skill sets that I had had since I was young? I mean, I was always really comfortable speaking to people. I really thrived in interpersonal relationships and desired them so deeply. And I had seen my mother teaching karate my whole life. So there was this like teaching element while we were teaching a different thing that I felt like I could be a part of it. And I think it was having had some of those experiences of everything I thought I knew about the world getting blown open through experiences in the body, just like psychedelic in the body without any substance whatsoever, just this profound, wow, there's so much here moments that made it almost like I had no choice but to be a part of calling us back to this in some way. So it didn't feel like I even had an option. It felt like you need to be doing this, Jess. And yeah, I've never looked back. And I've, as much as there have been feast and famine moments over the last 20 years of doing this and trying to figure out how to make it work in a system that doesn't really work, and wanting it to be something that was in deep integrity and relationship to everybody has to eat, we have to take care of ourselves, and how do I make it mean what it needs to mean for me to be okay, for me to be feeling like I am part of the conversation in the way that I desire to be. And so it's been a balance of coming online and then coming back to retreat spaces in person, you know, with the pandemic and all of those things. And it always comes back to that thread of finding home in ourselves and then home with each other, and how important that has always been in amidst all the different eras of teaching yoga and, you know, teaching womb work, which we were talking about before we started recording. There's just been so many iterations of the way that I've shown up that just keep calling me back to the thread, the vein that matters the most, I think. Yeah.
That's what I like, I think, is that it very much does seem to be, through all the things I've read about you and listened to you talk before and things, is that it's very much, as you said, it's almost like calling that you had no choice to ignore, really.
Yeah.
If you'd ignored it, it's like the alarm clock that just keeps getting louder and louder. And it's like if you ignored it for too long, it just, goodness knows what would happen. But thankfully, you were able to listen and to hear what was there.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I talked to a tantra or tantric teacher a little while ago, and she was saying how important she felt it was that you understand, or we understand, ourselves and our own bodies, as well as our brains. So I think we've done a lot of work with people going to see psychiatrists and therapists and talking therapy, etc. Which I think is absolutely is great.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there is that perhaps increased recognition that talking to somebody or doing something more somatically or from a tantric perspective, where you're recognizing the changes it has on the body. And I think one of the things you were saying is that I think in our very, very young life, we're sort of conditioned by society and perhaps by our parents that if we walk around with 2 years old and our hand is down our pants, whatever, it's like, no, it's dirty. Or and we when we first get into puberty, we first masturbate, we do it very, very quickly just to get off, and nobody's at the door. We don't take the time to explore and understand our own bodies. And I just wondered what you felt about the importance of knowing ourselves and our bodies and our minds together.
Oh, and so I feel like it's the big disconnect that we have from nature is that we don't recognize that we are nature, right? And the natural world doesn't have shame. You know, the natural world, animals, is just not we are part of that. But I think part of the disconnect that we feel from the natural world also reflects in the way that we are viewing our bodies as machines that need to function in a way that we've decided, almost like, you know, these are the functions you're allowed, these are the postures
Yeah.
you're allowed, these are the facial expressions that will get you whatever needs you have met. There are so many things that are learned behaviors for avoiding shame in the community and for trying to stay safe and getting our needs met. So much of what we allow in the body is reflective of that, which is profound in itself to witness the programming inside of bodies. And I love that, we're having the conversation around what I would call, and I have a really beautiful friend who uses this terminology, and my teacher does as well, erotic innocence, which is very much
Mhm.
just like this. It's the primal spark. I mean, in so many of the tantric spaces, one of the things that you'll hear alongside like the kundalini energy of like bringing life back into the body and allowing it to circulate, the actual spark of life to move through the system. And like eros, or like the spark of what we might consider to be sexual energy, is very much life moving through our
Mm.
systems. And so our orientation to that spark of life moving through our systems and what we tell ourselves about it and what we make it mean, I think is it's a fascinating kind of like, mm, let's say mind body rather than brain body, because the brain is actually probably
Yes.
your most erogenous zone, right? Your brain is very much like where
Yeah.
you're getting so much communication, but there's something to the expansion of our experience of what pleasure gets to be as well, which is a huge aspect in my work and my world, which is just reclaiming like sensuous conversations with our world where we're actually taking in how much is available in any moment in temperature of the air and tastes and smells and color, and that all of this is really, it's the same material that reminds us that we're alive, and that is the same spark that creates desire, creates all of the kind of surge through the body. And I do think a big part of the challenge that we face is that because bodies don't feel safe, and we can talk about that all day long in talk therapy, which I think is incredibly supportive. But when bodies haven't felt safe and don't feel safe, and they're storing many little pockets of really undigested material,
Mm.
meaning anything that was too much, too soon, too fast throughout the duration of our lives, it just kind of gets stored in these little calcified pockets in tissue. And it manifests what I see as like where the pain holds, or where mobility changes and is limited, or where balance is impacted, like the orientation in our body. We really are, our personalities and our bodily presentation is telling the story of our lives. And if we can get to the point where that gets to be this beautiful thing, even though there's ache and even though there's places inside that are harder to be with, I think we unlock and we open a whole different relationship with body. And body becomes something that really does deserve devotion and care, and pleasure in itself in every way is something that's just care for the system, to remind it that it's alive, to feed it with smells and sounds and touch and taste and all the things that help us remember that we're part of something. We're part of a natural world that, you know, just is trying to be what it is. And I think that's I think a big piece of the puzzle for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people maybe go out into nature on vacation, or they go hiking, or they go into the water or the mountains or whatever, and they
Mm-hmm.
feel, wow, this is great. I feel really refreshed. But they still don't connect it with being.
Yeah.
But you're not going to visit nature. You are nature, and I think sometimes we just don't. And it's funny when you were saying that. I was just thinking we are. I mean, even though we share, I don't know what it is, 99% of our DNA with lots of animals, with
Mm-hmm.
chimps, whatever else. We are the only species that chooses to wear clothing,
Mm-hmm.
which I guess
Fascinating.
it does cover our bodies, and there's that sort of shame thing that people have. And I think we even cover our minds as well, with even without being clothed. We just
Mm-hmm.
almost partition them off, so they are okay. You can look at this thing, but not something else. Or does that make sense? Yeah, we sort of hide who we are, both with our clothes and with our attitudes and with our
Yeah.
values and lots of different things, which seems to be
Mm.
yeah, it must be quite hard to peel back those layers, really. So
Mm.
if somebody reaches out to you and looks at the work you've done and thinks, wow, this is somewhere I
Mm.
could really aspire to be,
Mm.
how do you start
Mm.
almost not breaking down the barriers? That sounds like a very violent metaphor, but how do you
Get it?
start helping people emerge, really? And that's what it is. Maybe it's sort of emerging from a
Mm.
chrysalis or shedding the skin that they've had. How do you start that process?
Yeah, it's interesting that your body moved this way too, because what I'm going to say is it's almost like there is very much a reconciliation of any parts
Mhm.
that we have condemned to the basement. So first we've got to go get them out of the basement. So that's a part of it, right? There are aspects
Yeah.
of self that we have told ourselves we're not allowed to be, not allowed to have. There is definitely a wholeness reconciliation that is a part of maybe my overall approach. But
Mhm.
usually my first doorway is to bring people into the moment that is now the best I can. And so especially if I get the great privilege of having bodies in front of me and with me and I can feel what the body's communication is, which is often
Mhm.
not necessarily what the personality is telling me. The body speaks the truth and there's no way of avoiding it, which I love. So oftentimes my first doorway is gravity. The first thing that I'll do is say, you're not going to figure this out with language. It's going to be through a different language of sensation. It's going to be through that first awareness that gravity is the one, like mama, who's never dropped you. You have, every single time you've fallen, no matter how hard, she's caught you every time and she will again, right? There's this like trust that you're on the ground and that you're now, because so often the kind of fracturing that I see happening, which includes all of the many ramifications of trauma, it's a
Yeah.
lack of presence. It's always a lack of presence. It's that we're so concerned with something that we're afraid is coming, or we're still living in moments that we haven't let the body realize are over. And so the system is, it's everywhere but here. And so I do a lot of work with like, okay, let's find down first. Let's notice all that is currently here as the first doorway to this homecoming of arriving inside of ourselves. And then what happens when you arrive inside of yourself, it's kind of like opening up a storage container or a garage or wherever you've been throwing things that you haven't been organizing. And you're looking around and you're like, okay, here's what we've got. And we're very patiently, one sensation at a time, one breath at a time, one honest sound at a time, combing through the tendrils of what it is to be human, not with the effort to discard any aspects of self, because this doesn't really work that way, but with, I think, an effort to be as present and neutral as possible, especially in the beginning, that
Mhm.
hopefully eventually can turn into some compassion as we realize how much this body has carried us through and how much I mean, I love the book Joyous Body by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I spent some time with her in Colorado, and she speaks to the body as consort, like your greatest friend that you will ever have, who has woken up every day and said, let's get breakfast every day, and like really just constantly, even through illness and surgeries and ailments and hard things, body's always trying the best it can to protect and support and care for you no matter what. And it's rebraiding that relationship, I think, it is my door for sure in terms of
Mm.
how I've come home to myself, how I continue to come home to myself. And I think what emerges from that is a more authentic expression in our lives. Like you said about the masks that we're wearing, it becomes harder and harder to take breaths that aren't honest, to relate in ways that aren't authentic. It just becomes impossible. So that's my door, really, is presence first. Yeah. Mm.
It's really powerful, isn't it? Because a lot of people
Mm.
spend a lot of time in the past which we can't change really.
Mm-hmm.
They look forward, which is great. We all need things to look forward to, but we can't live in the future. We can't affect what's happening until we're there.
Sure.
And almost the present is almost a, well, it's just where I am now, isn't it? It almost becomes the least important of all of them, which is so odd because we talked before we hit record about the fact that we're able to connect incredibly well technologically, but you walk through a train carriage or an office or a house, and you'll see everybody sat on their phones, connecting with people that might be thousands of miles away, and that sort of physical recognition of where we are at that moment is something that we don't necessarily embrace. And I just wonder what is the I guess the power and the value of being embodied and being present in yourself at one time or another.
Yeah. I mean, I think we do a lot less searching and a lot more savoring because we start to realize that so much of what we think we're looking for in all of these other timelines and all of these other engagements is actually here inside of the moment that we're in. And I think this is something that weaves into even like some of the magical stuff that I do. Really, anything we say we want, it's not about the thing, it's about the feeling that we want to have when we experience whatever that is. It's always about the feeling. And what if all of the feeling was available right now? We just have to open all of the doors and the windows to looking around and seeing through that lens of like a choice to be in relationship with our lives. So much changes if we actually are willing to, like, for example, like you said, if everybody on the train is looking at their phone, talking to someone who's 1,000 miles away, but not the person sitting right next to them. And it's like there's something missing if we don't remember where and when we are. And if we can't be present, then really we'll be searching forever, right? If we can't come into that relationship. So I think that that's the gold there, or the magic there, is in the present moment. Pretty much everything that we've ever been looking for is right there. But what the challenge is it comes with everything that hurts too. There's an ache to it. It's like when you turn on feeling, you turn on all the feelings. You don't get to pick which one.
Yes, not selective, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that I really try the best that I can to do in my work is grow our window of tolerance, grow our body's capacity to digest stimulus and sensation, and be with the nuance and the paradoxical experiences of being human. So it's grief and gratitude come together. Pain and pleasure often come together. There's always going to be hope and fear together. They walk together hand in hand, and it's really not good, bad emotions. It's just the wholeness of being human. It's all part of it. And if we can root into the inner anchor inside of us, the capacity, the let's say the highest self, or the wisest aspect of self, or the most eternal, the soul essence, like what you might call that, that part knows how to handle all the others, knows how to be with all of the emotions, knows how to be with the sensations. I feel like it's ancient and future. It's like there's so
Yeah.
much wisdom in that part that we all have. We just have to have experiences of touching and trusting that our body can have new experiences, that our emotions can be nuanced, can be this and that, all of it. It's just it grows our threshold, and then there's more space for life in our system. And I think that's a really, really profound gift.
And do you think that people go through life and they live their life? They perhaps get married and have a couple of kids. They go to work. They come home from work. They retire. They live for a few years in retirement, and then they pass away. And do you think that people? Do you think almost there's that sort of safety in what you know and what you see,
Oh, yeah.
whereas putting yourself out there and exploring yourself, other people, and looking for more is
Mm.
is scary.
Oh, definitely. I think we're terrified of what we can't know and what we haven't
Yeah.
seen modeled. And there,
Yeah.
there's some survival instincts that are built in around that that makes sense. And I think one of the most freeing things I've ever experienced in my life is this concept of wisdom that is basically wisdom is when you realize that you can't know things for sure. Like, I love this concept.
Yeah.
Like, that there's this incredible development that comes where you're just like, how mysterious, how curious that is, how fascinating that I don't get to know that for sure. And that there's a new
Mm.
corridor that I get to be awed by. I get to wonder. I mean, we lose so much of that curiosity that we have as children. Hopefully, we got a chance to have that. Sometimes we don't get a chance to have that curiosity, but curiosity is a sign that the system is actually in a state of presence if we have
Mhm.
access to curiosity. So I think that the fear, the salve for the fear is the curiosity. It's like to be able to go, okay, I wonder what's here. I wonder if we could trust that, we can hold ourselves and that we can take it at whatever pace we need to. I'm a very big advocate for slow and steady process in general.
Mhm.
I think organisms respond really well to gentle, steady titration of slowly growing the threshold that we have for experience. I think sometimes when we get catapulted into things very quickly, um, bodies tend to just tense right up anyway. So
Yeah.
there's a huge benefit to letting the system know that I know that's scary and different, but we don't have to go fast and we can stop whenever we need to. There's like a permission that we can give ourselves to lean into the curiosity of what more is already here. It's just underneath the surface. It's sitting and waiting for us in our capacity for relationship to our world, the permeability of the world meeting us and really entering us in a really profound way that might bring us to our knees. And that's why we don't do it often, because it's just such a profound thing to experience, how much is here. Yeah. Mm.
It is a wonderful word, curiosity, and
Mhm.
I think it's something I personally would really like to be more.
Mm.
Not be more curious, but to accept and
Mhm.
explore. And I mean, I've always loved learning and educating myself and getting more knowledge and things. But sometimes I think curiosity, a bit like the word you used earlier on, sometimes it feels a bit more innocent. I'm just
Mhm.
really curious about what it would feel like to do that. And as you said, most of the things that we do, most of the things that we aspire to have, even, and I hadn't necessarily thought about it this way before.
Mhm.
It's all for how it makes us feel, what
Oh, yeah.
feeling it gives us. Because if somebody's, I don't know, if somebody's wealthy and they want to buy a new, goodness knows, a new Ferrari or whatever,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily the car they're buying; it's the feeling the
Oh, yeah,
car gives them.
definitely.
And that's why the feeling when you buy your 10th Ferrari, not talking from experience, is very different than the first Ferrari you buy. It's like the first time you
Mm.
visit a place is very different from the 20th time you visit a place. So you're never going to get back the same feeling. And
Mm.
that's why I think people get addicted to things like alcohol or drugs or porn or whatever. They have that initial hit that, wow, it's giving me a particular feeling.
Yeah.
You have to go more and more or deeper and deeper to get the same feeling.
Mm.
And I think being curious about what surrounds us, what nature has to offer,
Mhm.
feels like a far healthier way of living,
Yeah.
both mentally and physically.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like even in the context of what's available inside of the body at any given
Mm,
moment, it's like a whole microcosm of the universe in terms of
mhm,
what's available inside of us. Like, if we stay curious, then every time we land in our body with observation, every time that we're just like, I wonder what's here today, and I'm going to try to meet it as neutrally as I can, it's almost like there's less and less need for stuff outside of me to fill anything if I'm with what's here inside of me. If I'm able to be with the vastness and the nuance of like, yeah, this is achy over here, but this feels spacious and this actually feels kind of tingly and soft. And then over here, like there's just so much happening in the body in any given moment. I don't know how I
Yeah.
could possibly be bored, right? Like there's just so much happening. I just think that there's like, so often we're looking for louder, faster, sweeter, saltier,
Yeah.
something to jar us into feeling something.
Hmm.
And I'm very much a, can we sensitize? Can we fine tune our capacity to notice how much is here, which will have a similar impact where like it does kind of turn up the volume on what is happening in the system.
Hmm.
But you realize that it's almost like you're exercising the muscle of awareness, right? You're exercising the capacity to notice rather than looking for something to put into the system or to consume in order to try to have that happen. We can actually
Hmm.
fine tune our palette for sensory awareness, which I think is just a massive gift, to not need. It's almost like the self-sustainable organism. The organism has what it needs to have those experiences of pleasure in just having a beautiful meal. We
Yeah.
just are constantly looking for it to be louder, I think, from outside. It's interesting.
We are, and you'll often see people. I've been guilty of this,
Mm.
sitting at a desk or whatever and consuming a meal whilst on the laptop or on the phone or whatever else. And to be honest, if somebody asked me 5 minutes afterwards what I'd eaten, I wouldn't be able to tell them.
Yeah.
So we almost don't even allow ourselves to experience things in individually. It's just eating something. I'm watching this. I'm reading that. I'm typing this, and it's just
Mm.
yeah, we don't allow ourselves to have that experience of savoring, tasting,
Yeah.
enjoying or not the food and drink that we're having really.
Mm.
So we think, yeah, that was a bit bland, but it wasn't bland at all. You weren't aware what you were doing. So you therefore, rather than having something stronger or spicier or whatever, no, just be aware of what you're actually eating. I thought I was,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, thought that for a while.
Yeah.
What does magic and being a practicing witch bring to your life and your state of being?
Yeah. I mean, for me, magic is that same spark of aliveness that I spoke to with when it comes to the creative pulse in the system. I think
Hmm.
magic is the undercurrent, the vibration that we all can feel, that we might have many different names for. Um, and there is this relationship to something so vast and so indescribable that has brought such richness to my experience of being human. Because what
Hmm.
happens is I realize that there are so many conversations that my organism is having with this vastness, with the natural world. And I very much am an animistic or very nature rooted in my practice. It's kind of like I very much believe that everything alive is having conversation with me. Like there is a permeability to my presence in my world. One of the gifts that magic has brought into my life, and I do think that science and magic meet in so many beautiful convergence points. There's actually a book called Where Science and Magic Meet because there are so many convergence points. And for those people who I have in my world who might be a bit skeptical to the concept, I say it's kind of just spicy psychology, like in some ways, because what we're doing is we're kind of going around some of the corridors and blockades that our mind builds that keep us
Hmm.
limited. So there's an aspect of neuroplasticity involved and an aspect of curiosity that's involved in, seeing something like time as a little bit more like spaghetti than it is a linear thing, right? A little bit more. Well, if I visit, you think about this from a therapy perspective, if I visit myself in a memory when I was 7, and I am what I needed for myself in that moment, then could it be possible that what got me through when I was 7 was me now visiting me then, right? Like, is there some, like those little things where it's like, well, we've been told that time is this, but is it? You know, do I know that for sure? Because my experiences have been quite different. And you see how
Yeah.
trauma is really a time disease. We don't know
Mhm.
when we are, right? So I've found there has been such medicine for me in that kinship with the natural world, in questioning many of the structures and the systems, and experiencing my life outside of dogma, outside of like, this is the one way, like I don't follow any particular set of rules, um, which has been wildly liberating. And I think that reclaiming the relationship to the concept of being witch, which I think really just means I feel like I get to have a say in some of the trajectory of my life. I may not be able to dictate, which waves are coming, but I can decide how I ride them. And I feel that there's an empowerment layer around the practice of witchcraft, which, maybe it's that I write a check to myself, or I, do a small ritual where I'm saying, this body, this body is healthy and well, and I'm cared for, and I'm going to nourish this vessel. Again, look at it as spicy psychology if you choose to, or that there's an undercurrent that is hearing my prayers or my devotional offerings that's saying, hey, all right, I can give you a little extra in that direction. You've figured out what you need. And so there's space for that current to move in your system. There's a discernment and a decisiveness that gets to be involved in some of carving my way forward. So I think that it informs my work and my path by way of the fire, the empowerment to participate actively in the things I can. And of course, trust the things, there's going to be a lot of stuff that I can't. And I'm okay with that. But I also feel like it's a powerful thing to get to say. For example, I've been saying I wanted to sing with a band or sing in general for quite a long time. It's taken me quite a few years of visualizing myself being brave enough to do such a thing. But I know I made it happen. The timeline is pretty wild. I mean, I created an event. I was like, I'm going to run an event where I sing and I know nothing else. I just know that. And I just put it out there. I made it exist on Eventbrite with no real context. And the same day, I got a message from a band who is in my town who's looking for a singer. And I'm like, I'm not sure exactly how those kinds of things work out, but I like to trust and believe that I get to be part of that conversation and that my clarity helps those things to carry forward. So that's been a really cool piece of the puzzle for me.
What a fabulous answer.
Hmm.
I love that. Yeah, and check out Jessi's Instagram for the singing.
Oh yeah.
I think it's pretty good. I liked that.
Thanks.
No, it's good. And like I say, you manifested it happening, and it's yeah. And I think if people don't feel that everything is connected, yeah, I think it must feel like a very difficult
Yeah.
place to live. Really, I mean, I've yeah, probably not for long enough, but for a reasonable amount of time, had that absolute belief that everything is connected. I mean, you have a connection with water and with plants and with animals and everything. And I'm sure, whatever we want to call it, science will prove it one day to somebody's satisfaction. But I don't think we need the proof of it. It's just the proof of it is literally
Yeah.
in us. We don't need the proof because we can see it, feel it, and know.
Mhm.
Just look at ourselves and listen to our bodies when we're in particular place, and see how our feelings change when we're in a very built up sort of city with no greenery, everything's dark, whatever, and then you walk around the corner, there's a beautiful park there with a small pond or a little river or stream, whatever. Your body literally feels different.
Mhm.
Hasn't been told to. It hasn't. You haven't instructed it to feel different. There's no sign there saying feel different now. Your body, your shoulders, your everything just feels different. It's so it's so obvious when you even give yourself that tiniest bit of time to see it and to feel it, not just to sort of walk straight through it or walk past it or walk whatever.
Exactly.
It's yeah, it's kind of weird, but I think it is it's very clear if you let yourself
Noted.
be in that space.
Absolutely.
And I've done a lot of work working with women and helping them come through trauma and helping them recognize the power that their femininity and their feminine self has. And I just wondered how you help women that perhaps have had trauma or have never been comfortable with sex or their sexuality, or how do you help people be more confident,
Mm.
comfortable,
Yeah.
feel safe?
Yeah. Safety is a long game, right? So it's reclaiming safety in the system is also reclaiming a relationship to the way that arousal functions in our body. Arousal, not as sexual arousal, but like
Mhm.
really just any time that the system is alerted that there's new stimulus. So
Yeah.
I mean, there are many approaches depending upon what's going on in someone's body, right? And I'm very
Mhm.
much a body-based practitioner first.
Mhm.
So oftentimes I'm really watching for the way that movement has been impacted by the things that have happened. And
Mhm.
I'm less concerned with the specific details. And I think it's actually beneficial for the person not to have to rehash over and over and over and over again the hard things that have happened. I think the body
Yeah.
is trying to digest. And so one of the big things that I have seen happen, and really it informed so much of my practice, because this wasn't something I was making happen, it was something that bodies just kept doing. There is like a very clear knowing that our systems have, especially those of us who have physical wombs. There's this thing that happens similarly to the way that the body knows how to release. There's a downward current of energy, and our bodies are
Mhm.
really meant to either be in like a holding pattern or in a clearing pattern. And it's meant to be doing this energetically throughout the duration of our lives is what I've kind of this is what I've experienced in my body and what I've watched. Again, I can't know
Mhm.
anything for sure, but it seems through my research of observation over the last 20 years and many bodies, that there is this clearing downward, that the bowl of the pelvis, which I sometimes refer to as the cauldron, like which exists in all bodies, right? There's this like cauldron of creative fire, sexual energy, all kind of lives in that same space.
Yeah.
And if there has been if there is almost residue there, there's a way down that it's trying to move sometimes. And I think what happens is we try to talk our way through, and it's actually significantly more accessible sometimes to send it down. What that looks like sometimes in bodies is it kind of looks a little bit like energetic birthing processes, where there's kind of a like an achy groan that happens. This isn't something I'm prompting. It's just something that so
Mhm.
many bodies will do when they're moving things down and through their system. It's like their system has needed to digest the material, and without needing to know specifically what it is, the body actually knows how to do that, which really only happens when the body feels safe enough, which again is a gravity component and a presencing component, to be very, very honest moment to moment with what sensory information is present. So, what I've found is that through that anchoring to gravity and like lots and lots of presencing, the breaths get more honest, the sounds get more honest. And then what's happening is the body is actually given the space to have the experience that it probably has needed to have since whenever these kind of woundings occurred.
Mm.
And it allows for the completion or the reconciliation, like the cycle gets to end in the body when it's given the opportunity to be this wildly intelligent organism that it is, which all of the rest of nature all the rest of the animal kingdom kind of does this, right? When there's something hard and scary that happens, they make a lot of noise, or they shake, or they do something with their body to discharge that energy that we are socialized not to, and then it stores in the system. So I have found that through the practices that I've led, and I've cultivated an embodiment modality that is very much, if you didn't know more of the science of what's happening, it would kind of just look like a bunch of people rolling around like worms on the ground and making sounds. Like they're just kind of curling and uncurling and plopping. And it's all the stuff the body naturally wants to do. The body wants to unravel itself. It wants to twist and shake and give itself space. And I think that that is what is happening. The digestion creates space. And that is where we can change the trajectory of what we're doing. So when there's not as much of this kind of clustered, unprocessed residue in the system, when it's starting to clear that backlog, there's an opportunity for a new orientation, a new way of being in relationship with ourselves, and thus with sexuality, and thus with our pleasure, and thus with our relationships. And so it really comes from this like willingness to open that weird drawer that we have in our system where we put all the stuff that we don't know where else to put it. It's just all in these strange caverns. But I've seen it repeatedly with women that when they feel safe enough, when left to their own devices, their body will clear the residue. And it is one of the most miraculous things I have ever seen and experienced in my own system as well. It just happened on its own when I let it. And then I was trying to create, nest enough, safe enough environments for those processes to happen organically. And I feel like there's so much of that now. And now when women all gather near each other and they're all comfortable, like as they start to get comfortable, when a new person comes into that space and they're looking around and they're like, oh, we just make whatever noise we have. We don't hold the noises back. We don't hold the,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. It's not held back. It's profound to witness. It really is.
Just a personal reflection, if that's okay, for a minute. So my dad died a month ago, and my mum died less than 2 years ago, and I haven't grieved for them in the way that I'm not sure grief, it's a terrible word, is supposed to work. And I think the reason for that is that I am fearful of getting stuck in the grief, or the grief getting stuck in me. And something you said then about the working through it and helping letting the body release it and things. So I just wonder. Sorry, it's like a free therapy session. Is the things you just talked about there? Can that help with the sort of the grief process or other things like that? Because I feel I'm not holding on to it. I'm not almost accepting it in a way. I'm just sort of it's squashed down in this little ball and it's pushed down somewhere. And I think there it is. It'll be fine. Obviously, it's not fine. So I just wondered, if what you're saying would work for grief or other emotions like that.
Absolutely. And if I can offer, there's one resource that I think is one of the most beautiful resources for grief that I've ever come in contact with. It's a book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow by Francis Weller. And he speaks to the communal grief process that used to exist in, a long time ago. We used to grieve together. And I think there's a together piece that's helpful, like being in spaces with each other where we realize that not only is it normal and human to be feeling our way through what we're feeling, but we're not alone in it. And I hear very often, especially in even my work with women in womb work and things like that, the words you used, the fear of being stuck in it, that's a very common thing that people will name when there's any big aching experience in the system. And so what I often try to support is the resourcing of self-trust, that you can feel your way through anything and that you can take it as it comes. So when it's big, you can meet that with as much of yourself as you're willing to, and you can always kind of toggle back. It doesn't need to be full speed ahead. It can be small digestible bits at a time. But specifically with grief, and we are actually towards the end of July, I start introducing this work with my witchcraft clients, is that my teacher says this to me. I know her teacher said this to her, and that is that grief and gratitude are two sides of the same coin. And sometimes the processing of grief can be even more nourishing for your system if because this is the thing, we don't grieve for anything unless it mattered. And so
Yeah.
there's this like capacity to allow ourselves to have this like almost aching appreciation for the things that we've gotten to, the ways we've gotten to love in our lifetime. And it's like the willingness to say, I would still choose to love that deeply, even though it hurts this much. And there's this like, it allows for the love that's the undercurrent of grief to be felt through it. And I think that that nourishes that process a bit, for those who are having a hard time. And there's something that I think it's beneficial to take it a bite at a time if you can, and just kind of notice
Mhm.
where in the body there feels to be density. Because from my understanding, grief tends to be oriented in the chest cavity in a lot of bodies, but in some people it does get held in lower regions. But you do notice like almost like a breathing component or a lung component to that, which is makes sense in Chinese medicine as well.
Yeah.
So the invitation of life back into the system through breath becomes like, I'm going to take really honest breaths, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to let them be honest, and I'm going to let my exhales have whatever sound they have if I'm willing to. And if you ever make a sound and you scare yourself, you're kind of like, oh, that was a little too much. You just, the next one, a little, you're toggling and you're titrating what you feel comfortable with at a time without avoiding it entirely, right? It's like, can I touch a little at a time? And
Yeah.
I do work with a lot of this. I have had a lot of layers to this experience. My mom just lost her mom and lost her sister not too long before. So this has been these last couple of years, there have been a lot of deaths around me too. And they say that when we lose people, especially people very close to us, it opens a door for like any unprocessed grief to all try to run through the door at once.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like,
Like, quick,
oh,
quick, the door's open, quick, yeah, no,
open.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
yeah.
they all
Yeah.
run
Things
to
I haven't thought about. Things I hadn't thought about for years and years and years. Why am I thinking about this? And
yeah.
it's just,
It's looking for a door, and that's what I mean about backlog. It doesn't necessarily need to be, and this is what I do with bodies. It doesn't have to be something we know exactly which thing we're touching. It's just something's here and I'm going to be with it. I'm going to be with it as honestly as I can. I'm going to be with it as neutrally as I can. Almost like you're becoming the best parent to your whole system as you can,
Mm.
giving it as much compassion as you can, and noticing that it doesn't have to mean one thing or another. There can be nuance to it, right? Like, yes, there's pain here, but there's also gratitude here, and there's also space over here. And then I don't feel anything in my elbow, and all these things are happening at once. Wow, being human is quite a thing, right? You start
It
seeing
is.
the vastness of it all. It's
It
just
is.
never ceases to
And
amaze.
the one thing that I have taken from it, which people
Mm,
might think is a little bit odd to say, is that
mm,
I've sort of taken a gift from it in so much as it's made me want to spend some time
mm,
thinking about whether I want the next 30 or 40 years to be the same as today,
mm,
whether the path I'm on is the right path, and whether when I look back, hopefully, when I'm 80 or whatever, that I look back and think, yeah, that was the life I wanted to live. Because
mm,
even though both my parents were sort of in the late 70s and they lived healthy lives until they died, sort of thing, yeah, you want to think, gosh, well, are there things that
mm.
I haven't explored or been curious about?
Yeah.
And it's not to say I am change everything in my life, not at all, but it's just, as you said, I think it's being taking the gift of being present and thinking, right, so
Mm,
do I want to? Why don't I go to Costa Rica and spend some time with Jessi and her husband on the next retreat and do that. Why don't I do that?
Yeah.
I can afford to do that. I have the time to do that. Why don't I do that? What's stopping me doing that? Those things. It's those sort of things, I guess. Rather than thinking
Mm.
I shouldn't, and not thinking even why, thinking about what are the things that I want to do without being selfish. What are the things that I think will
Mhm.
make me happier and therefore a better person for other people around me, and to be my
Mm.
authentic self, I guess. Does that sound selfish, or does that make
No,
sense?
it sounds beautiful, and I think selfish is important too, even if it felt that way. I think that's a part of self that, sometimes the advocacy for the things we really want. It's so easy
Mhm.
for us to tell those inside parts if they are really looking out for themselves. It's so easy for us to categorize them in that, especially with previous generations' interpretations of what selfishness is as well. I don't think so
Mhm.
at all. I think that that's beautiful. And I also think that sometimes when it comes to observations of those who came before us in our ancestral line, we are the living altars to the prayers that our ancestors made for us, right? So we are what they always wished for. And we have an opportunity, unlike the opportunities that they might have had, to have experiences and even consider questions that they might never have had the chance to consider. And I think that it's almost an offering to them to do those
Yeah.
things, to show up for those things. It becomes like this, my grandmother who just passed, she and I shared a birthday and we were very, very close. And she always wanted me to sing. It was always like the thing that, because she was very, very big into that world, but did never really pursue it herself. And there's this beautiful piece of the puzzle, if it's what you want, where you get to say, look, Graham, look what I'm doing, or like, see, I'm doing it. Like, even to the way, way back ancestors who were just hoping that their line would survive, right?
Yeah.
That you get to go to a jungle and do like all these kinds of things that, maybe we're not even on the spectrum of possibility to the ones who came before us, and the things we get to do and get to experience and get to see. And I don't know. I think we owe it to ourselves, and I think we owe it to all the sacrifices that all these generations of people have made for us to maybe get an ounce of liberation, right? An ounce of mental liberation, of freedom from all of the confining systems that exist. I think it's a beautiful offering to them. That's how I look at it, at least.
I'm going to save your answer on my phone and play it to myself whenever I doubt what I'm doing. So thank you for that.
Oh,
That's such a wonderful answer.
good. That means
Yeah,
a
no,
lot.
that was nice.
Mm.
I wanted to ask you a little bit
Yeah.
about ritual and
Hmm.
what role ritual plays in your work, and how rituals maybe can help people break down trauma or explore emotion, or what roles rituals play in our lives.
Yeah. I mean, a ritual is anything that you do repeatedly, right? So,
Mhm.
and you get to decide the intention, but it always comes down to the experience that you're creating in your body, right? So, if there is a particular energetic or a particular emotion that we're
Mhm.
desiring to experience, and we can cultivate a way of visiting the closest thing we've got to that as frequently as we're able to. I do a lot of anything that I do that has to do with manifestation or the trajectory that we're hoping for in our lives always comes from the moments that we have of gratitude for the little things that we've experienced that kind of give us a taste of the direction that we're desiring. So there becomes like a ritualistic visitation to those frequencies in our system that live in memory, right? So
Mhm.
it might be something like, if I'm desiring to cultivate more intimacy in my marriage, I might have a moment of being in my body, moving my body a particular way, and calling up all the memories of all the incredible moments that we've had together, and letting my body viscerally remember what it felt like to live those moments. So it's using when it's magic and we're intentionally using our capacity to visit past memories. So this is why it's like, typically I'm an advocate for presence,
Mhm.
because we go places we're not planning on going. But when we're intentionally visiting, like, yes, this is the energy that I'm actually desiring, and we're weaving that between the now and the then and the coming, there becomes this really profound, profound direction that we can feel into that is really supportive. So I think that ritual is a devotional practice of continuing to come back to ourselves. It doesn't have to be for a particular purpose. It can literally just be to cultivate more devotion in our relationship to self. So I think
Mhm.
that it becomes the homework oftentimes that I would offer to someone is keep coming back, keep coming back. Now, what does that look like? I'm big on I can experience all of the magic just through my body vessel. I don't need there to be any particular doodads on the table. Although, sure, if you want to light a candle, if you want to make, it can be anything like that, but it can also be make some art, sing a song, move your body, go for a walk in nature. Like, the ritualistic component is you're making it mean something and you're continuing to show up in devotion. So, ritual is kind of a fancy way of saying habits, that it's a habitual thing that we're choosing to continue to make it matter as much as we need it to bring our body into the frequency that we're needing. So sometimes it's like, if we're feeling really stagnant and we're feeling like the water's not moving in the body, maybe the ritual is we're going to jump up and down for a couple minutes and get things moving around in the system and remind us that we're alive. Like, that kind of stuff can be as simple as it is. Sometimes it's the hardest thing you can do is what feels maybe counterintuitive in the moment. I'm so tired. I'm going to go lay down.
Yeah.
It's like, are we tired because we need sleep? Or is the body so dissociated and fatigued that it actually really needs to be remobilized in order to be reminded that it's alive? So sometimes you have to experiment a little bit with that. But I do think that ritual um, is profound. And then, like, when I have groups of people together, we'll sometimes do a collective spell where we just kind of rock back and forth and we say things like I am, or yes, thank you, more please, or nothing that is, it's not scary. You're just going like this. You know what I mean? It's bilateral stimulation, which is to support your nervous system's capacity to digest what's happening. And it's always devoted to, what matters to you and cultivating more of what matters to you and deepening your relationship with your capacity to feel what matters to you. It's really, what we're doing when we're together, which is, well, it's funny what people think, what people might assume magic to be, and then what it ends up looking like. It's a bunch of people doing this by a lakeside saying, we just
Mm.
care about stuff that matters. That's really what it is. Kind of beautiful.
Yeah, I think people are very some very strange ideas about what magic is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, driven by Hollywood and everywhere else, really.
Mm.
So you have been kind enough to offer your time and your space to people in the coming couple of years. I know you've got retreats coming up in Panama and Costa Rica and the UK. What what should oh gosh, I hate that word.
Mm.
What can people expect to feel during the retreats, and how would I feel different maybe if I came along when I leave?
Yeah. I think that one of the things people always tell me is how quickly they feel like they belong when they show
Yeah.
up to those places, because I'm incredibly transparent, I'm incredibly goofy and real, and I don't sit on any kind of a hierarchical structure. I have dinner with everybody. I'm not separate from anything, and I think that people sometimes are concerned about the group of people they're with, which is never the concern with my people, because they are immediately ecstatic whenever anybody, is joining them for the first time. So I think the belonging piece is really beautiful, which was never a part of the plan. I was never trying to make it be a community of people. It's just kind of happened. People have been around for, some of them, 15 years. They've enjoyed, and they just want to keep coming back to these spaces where they feel most alive. And I think people can expect to be very gently moved to touch where the edges of their comfort zone are in terms of what they're willing to touch, without any pressure whatsoever to exceed, tons and tons and tons of personal autonomy and choice in terms of what you want to participate in and to what extent you want to participate in it. I always have a clinical therapist there with me too. Just in case you have an experience and you're like, I felt something, there's someone to talk to. So
Mhm.
it's really grounded and really well held in terms of everyone in the space is agreeing to a code of conduct where it's like nobody's going to give you unsolicited advice. Nobody's going to, come up and start venting to you about things that you didn't say you were ready to hear about. There's so much respect for how we share space and for how individuals have the opportunity to have their own process and ask for what they need. So I think that's often something people don't even realize they're going to get out of these experiences is practice communicating what they need and,
Yeah.
actually being met. And I think the primary feeling that people walk away with is feeling more alive. They feel like they're more here and they're more alive. And they're more resourced to enter into their world, which is really, really cool.
Mm. I sort of assumed it would be naked rituals in the moonlight, so I'm not sure I'm disappointed or excited now. I assumed you'd have your own. I assumed you'd have your own sort of throne that you sat on throughout the whole thing. Yeah, maybe we should look into that. I think thrones are good.
I should have a throne in naked rituals. I will say there have been a couple of times when I've gone to sleep and I've heard reported back that they all went down and did some naked thing at the beach. And I was like, oh, good for you. I was sleeping, but I'm happy that you had that experience.
Yeah,
So there's so much freedom for people to, have with the experience that they need, which is gorgeous.
it feels very much like one of those experiences that
Mm.
finds the right people, and the
Mm.
right people find it.
Mhm.
I can't imagine you get people that
Mhm.
are going to it without really wanting to go to it,
Oh,
because
yeah.
they've got to invest time and some money, and they've got to invest their self, etc. So if you're going to go to it and you're not going to
Be ready.
be part of
Yeah.
it would feel a little bit odd, wouldn't it? So, I mean, I'm sure everybody's been on these sort of corporate getaways, training that half of you don't want to go on, half of you do want to go on. It's team building, all that sort of. Oh my goodness! But I think it's something that's very, very,
Mm.
it feels very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you describe it beautifully on the website, so I would highly recommend people go and have a look
Yeah.
and just see what's out there. One final question, because I've taken up a lot of your time,
Sure.
so
No,
apologies.
it's fine. Mm.
Well, I guess it's two questions really. So one is when do you feel most alive and most your true self?
Mm.
And then secondly, how are you looking to evolve in the future? I guess personally and professionally, so I guess the presence now, so what makes you feel most alive? And then in the future, what does the future hold for you, do you think?
Mm. Right now, I feel most alive when I'm singing, um,
Hmm.
and moving my body. So I'm moving my body while I'm singing too. So there's definitely a thread of like when I'm deeply in my body, and then it's amplified when I'm singing because there's this. It feels like an unrestricted flow of energy moving through my system in a way I've never felt in any other environment, and I feel like all of my cells are getting fueled up like they're going to the gas station. They feel like every cell in my system is just going, yes, I'm here. And I can access that as well, just in my own movement practices,
Hmm.
in the way that I'm experiencing the depth that I'm experiencing in that. And I feel that one of the kind of growth edges for me is how can I allow for this felt sense to be transmitted in the way that I'm showing up with people, the way that I'm talking to you, the way that I'm talking to everybody
Hmm.
else. I'm really leaning into trying to have as much of an unrestricted flow of like what's on the inside coming out, meaning in all of my words, in everything that I'm sharing, I'm doing the best that I can not to filter anything and to let it be as honest and present as it possibly can, which translates also to like, I want to work on an album, music album, and have that be as honest as it possibly can be. Because I feel really strongly that for me personally, my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health is demanding that I am as authentic as I possibly can be. And anytime that there's even the slightest discrepancy in integrity in my system where it's like, I did this, I didn't really want to, every time my body just sends up these really obvious, like, no, back here, back here, back here. And it's becoming impossible to not really feel that pull back into the center of me. So my hope is to continue to deepen in that way and to bring even more of my authenticity than I knew was possible into everything I'm doing. So that's me.
Well, it's felt very authentic listening to you today.
That means a lot.
So thank you so much. You are, more than I could have hoped for. So, thank you so much.
That means the world. I'm so grateful.